Surprise, Indiana. Team Happy. Beep, beep. I would like Team Happy, my Indiana team, Jay Bade from the Florida team, Steve Rudner from the Texas team to stand up. Fill my bucket of happiness and give me a reason to coach year after year. Thank you. I am honored to stand here with so many amazing people who make a difference in the lives of others. Since 2001, this 100-mile bike ride has helped me live life -1. It has propelled me to become a TNT cycling coach, to conquer a fear of swimming with triathlons, to run more than 1 mile with marathons, to stand on the podium at a 24-hour solo mountain bike world championships. I've raced some of the toughest road and mountain bike courses around the world, all while fundraising for Team and Training. How did my TNT journey begin? I met this sweet guy named Pete in 1992 at a Halloween party, and we formed this instant friendship. Our first date was February 1st, 1993, at a midnight showing of the Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It's just a flesh wound. I was a cyclist, he was a runner. Quickly, Pete bought a road bike to keep up with me. We were out on a ride when a tandem passed us. We looked at each other and we bought a tandem later that day. We married in 1994, and soon after that, we were the proud parents of mountain bikes. Sorry, Mom and Dad, no grandkids. Our vacations revolved around cycling. Moab, Utah, an unbelievable place to mountain bike with a famous slick rock trail. Pete was scared to ride it. I told him, we only live once. He conquered it. It was during this trip that we found out about 24-hour mountain bike races. We filled our bucket list to ride 100 miles in one day, to do a 24-hour mountain bike race together, to open a salon, run marathons, travel around in a Winnebago. I was a hairstylist and he worked for Aveda Corporation. He helped me open the salon in 1997, Sundance Salon Spa. Our longest ride was a humid 100-degree day in Indiana. After the first 20 miles, Pete was utterly exhausted. He sat in the shade with his head in his hands. We stopped this ride at 61 miles. Our goal that day was 100. After that ride, each night, he would wake up in a pool of sweat. And we would work on his nutrition, and it worked, it helped a little bit. But he was just so fatigued during any bike ride. In October of 1999, Pete complained about a pain in his back. The doctors prescribed muscle relaxers, which didn't provide any comfort. Every week, he would go back, sometimes twice a week. On February 20th, 2000, Pete woke up and said he felt paralyzed from the chest down. The doctor said, we'll see you next week. Pete assured me he was okay. I went to the salon, and my first guest that morning was a registered nurse, just like my mom. She asked, how is Pete's back doing? I told her what happened, and she immediately got on her phone and called her doctor friends, and they said, get him here as soon as possible. I carried my 6'1", 200-pound husband to the car. We raced to the hospital, and the doctors immediately saw him. The doctor ran his thumb down Pete's spine, and Pete screamed in agony. The MRI showed a tumor the size of a sausage link in the middle of his spine, which was cutting off circulation and causing paralysis. The doctor said, Pete, you are scheduled for surgery at 8 a.m. tomorrow. There is a chance you may be paralyzed from the chest down. Pete's response, can I still use my arms to ride a bike? The next morning, the blood test before surgery triggered a red flag. They canceled surgery. A hematologist was called. They whisked Pete away for a bone marrow sample out of his hip bone. The nurse brought me into Pete's room, and there was this moment. The doctor looked at us, and we reached for each other's hands. The doctor said, "I have your results. You have CML. A group of doctors from St. Francis Hospital will create a treatment plan." Pete said, "That's good news, no surgery today." On our drive home, Pete wanted to visit the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's office. Pete noticed this poster on the wall with bikes, lots of purple, and happy faces. He asked what that ride was about. The receptionist handed him a brochure on an upcoming America's Most Beautiful Bike Ride. We walked out of the LLS office, and he said with a big smile, "We are doing that ride in June." Just 30 minutes earlier, he was diagnosed with cancer. I was trying to figure out what leukemia was. Pete was planning a bike ride. A few weeks later, I came home from work and found Pete on the floor in tears because the pain in his head was so intense. We went to the hospital for the second MRI. The MRI showed a tumor forming in his head the size of an orange. The immature blood cells were reproducing so fast, just like the one in the spine, that they were causing tumors throughout his body. Immediate action was needed with chemotherapy and radiation, and then the shaving of his head. Per doctor's orders, Pete was not allowed to ride a bike or drive a car. With a little rebellion, he went for a quick ride without a helmet. His response to my concern, "I already have a tumor." In a strong, determined voice, he said, "Next year, we will do that 100-mile ride." The St. Francis team was ready with their treatment plan for Pete. Dr. Dugan explained that there was a new test drug called STI 571 for CML patients, but unfortunately, there were 500 people in front of him in line. Today, that drug is called Gleevec. The wait was too long. A bone marrow transplant was the answer. Weeks later, we found out that Pete's only sibling, Jeff, was a 6-6 match. The next day, the landlord of our business said, "We're tearing the building down. You have 30 days to move out." After a frantic search, we found a quaint spot in the heart of Zionsville. The next day, July 3rd, the bone marrow transplant started with 5 weeks of isolation. Pete was thrilled that the Tour de France was about to start. He had something to watch for 3 of those 5 weeks, while my family and I renovated the new salon. On August 8, 2000, Pete left the hospital with a mask covering his nose and mouth. I asked, "Where would you like to go?" And he said, "I want to see the new salon." We drove there. He walked in and he said, "It's beautiful." A few weeks later, we got the bad news. The transplant didn't work. October. Pete was back in the isolation unit with 5 more weeks with his second bone marrow transplant. December, more bad news. The second bone marrow transplant was unsuccessful. The desperate doctors got Pete moved to top of the list for the Gleevec trial at the University of Chicago. Our one-day trip turned into 2+ months. With the passing of Christmas, New Year's, Pete's 36th birthday, I slept in a chair in the waiting room each night while he bounced in and out of ICU. Pete was so frail from all these treatments. His body was fighting itself. His body was just too exhausted to accept this new drug. With no hope, I asked Pete, "If you could do anything right now, what would it be?" He said, "I'd like to ride a bike." The amazing nurses at the University of Chicago made that happen. There was a stationary bike in the room next door. With a gaggle of nurses to assist him, Pete shuffled his 125-pound body slowly to the bike, pedaled a few times, and smiled the biggest smile. Pete was returned to St. Francis Hospital in Indianapolis by ambulance. The doctors greeted him with such sadness. Pete asked his favorite doctor, Dr. Dugan, "Doc, how many days do I have left to live?" Dr. Dugan responded, "1 day, maybe 2. Pete said in a funny way, "Well, that's a pisser." Pete grabbed my face and said, "You have to move on and do everything you want to do in your life. Dream big. I love you, and you are so special. Now, I need you to sit down and listen to me. I need to show you how to run our salon. This is the button to turn the computer on." I was his hairstylist. "These bills get paid monthly, and this is how you do payroll, and they get paid every 2 weeks on a Wednesday." I told him, "I'm going to do that 100-mile ride for you, but I have one request. I need your help on the hills." Pete passed away a few days later, February 12, 2001, with my mom assisting as the hospice nurse. Living life -1. A week after the funeral, I was attending the first group training ride. It was a 21-degree day. We rode 25 miles, and I walked every hill. After that ride, my 65-year-old father called and said, "I promised Pete I would take his place on the tandem and ride with you." Dad is 5'5". Pete was 6'1", so we had to order a new tandem. By the time we got the bike, we had 6 weeks to train for Tahoe. The morning of America's Most Beautiful Bike Ride, it was freezing cold, and everyone's nerves were bouncing around in their bodies. Probably what some of you are feeling right now. Dad and I clipped into our pedals, and away we rode. When we approached the big switchback to Emerald Bay, Dad's cold, arthritic hands couldn't shift the gears. Then, at the last moment, the gears shifted out of the big ring, and away we climbed. We were so grateful for all the cheering TNT folks. "Go, tandem!" At the next switchback, I saw someone dressed like Santa Claus, and if I remember right, I think his name was Pete. We reached the top. Down the other side of Emerald Bay, we flew. My dad doesn't believe in braking. Away we rolled at 50 miles an hour. I hung on, hoped my computer was wrong. Around the second sag, Dad was in a lot of pain. I said, "Dad, we can stop, it's okay." He just put his head down, and we rolled into Truckee. Dad and I stood in that long bathroom line and looked tired and discouraged. Out of nowhere, a little boy about 4 years old tapped Dad's leg and said, "Orange?" And Dad replied, "Thank you." The boy's mother ran over to us, her eyes full of tears, and said, "No, thank you. He's a survivor. Thank you for doing this ride." Dad looked at me in the eyes and said, "Let's ride." He pedaled like he was Lance Armstrong. He was unstoppable. It was like he had a secret blood transfusion. On your table, there are bottles of bubbles. Pete and I learned about the bubbles during the Midwest Tandem Rally. The captain is on the front of the tandem and the stoker is on the back. When inspiration is needed during a ride, the stoker takes the bubbles and lets the wind blow the bubbles. While we were climbing Spooner with the wind in our face, Dad said, "I just need a little sign that Pete is okay," as he wiped away some tears. Time for the bubbles, I thought. I dipped the wand into the bottle and the wind sent the bubbles back to all the other TNT riders. They cheered, laughed, yelled, "Thank you! You've lifted our spirits." Dad says, "What is happening?" I said, "The bubbles." He said, "Wow, listen to them. I wish I could see that." Then somehow the wind pushed the bubbles forward around Dad. Dad replied, Thanks, Pito. We conquered that 100-mile ride. Pete seemed to shine upon us. I would like my dad, Pappy, to stand up. I would take you up here, but I don't know. Words can't express. Words can express the gratitude for what he has done for me. At 70 years old, he conquered Tahoe the second time. At 71, he did his first Olympic distance triathlon in Wisconsin. And last year, we did Disney's half marathon where he received his Triple Crown. Now he is 80. His training got off to a rough start. While we were training in Arizona in April, his wheels slid in some gravel and he fell to the ground, fracturing his arm. So remember to unclick your pedal. So Pappy, whatever distance you are able to ride tomorrow, Team Pappy is proud of you. You are my inspiration. We all ride bikes for different reasons, whether it makes you feel like a kid you are racing to win, or it gives you a feeling of accomplishment. It is the essential thing that connects us. Tomorrow, if you need inspiration, chat with the other teams. Ask who is on the back of their jersey as you pass them. I have found that when you make someone else's day, it will lift your spirits, and in return, it will put a smile on your face. My goal is to help people achieve their dreams, live life, so it's +1. For Pete's sake, have a fantastic ride.